If you're interested in unflinching testimonies of survival, Holocaust literature, and the power of the written word to confront human atrocities, if so, then today's book just might be for you. Today, I'll be reviewing Cold Crematorium by József Debreczeni, translated by Paul Ochvari. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we're taking a look at a book that I picked up because it was on the New York Times list of 10 best books of 2024. I was intrigued, but also completely unaware of its history when I first picked it up. I didn't realize that Cold Crematorium was actually written 75 years ago. That immediately made me wonder, why would another Holocaust memoir, one that has been around for so long, suddenly make waves this year? And now I understand. This book had never been published in the US before, and given the rise of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, its long overdue arrival in English has likely contributed to its renewed interest and urgency. To give you some historical context and synopsis, the author József Debreczeni, who I will just refer to by his first name Joseph because I'm having a very hard time saying Debreczeni, he was a Hungarian journalist and poet who was deported to Auschwitz in 1944. Like so many others, he faced what was essentially a coin toss for survival. He was sent to the right instead of the left. He spent 12 months in multiple concentration camps, enduring forced labor under horrifying conditions, and ultimately ended up in what was known as the Cold Crematorium. It was the so-called hospital for the forced labor at Camp Dachau. I apologize for my pronunciations, but this wasn't a place of healing. It was a place where prisoners too weak to work were left to die. And when Soviet and Allied troops advanced, rather than executing the remaining prisoners outright, the Nazis left them in a state of slow extermination, starving, sick, abandoned to their fate. And Joseph recorded these experiences in Cold Crematorium, a memoir that stands as both a first-hand witness account and an indictment of the Nazi regime. It was first published in Hungarian in 1950, but Cold War politics and anti-Semitism kept it from ever reaching an English-speaking audience. It was seen as too pro-Soviet for the West and too focused on Jewish suffering for the East. As a result, it remained in obscurity for decades, despite receiving literary recognition in Serbia and Hungary. This is a hard book to read, and not because of the writing. I think the translation is generally quite well done, but because of the reality of its details. It's very raw, it's immediate, and it's relentless in its depiction of the camps. The New York Times called it as immediate a confrontation of the horrors of the camps as I've ever encountered. Unlike some Holocaust memoirs that reflect on survival with time and distance, Joseph wrote this with searing immediacy. He had no illusions about what he witnessed, and his journalistic eye for detail makes the suffering and the violence and the dehumanization unflinchingly real. One of the most striking things about Cold Crematorium is how Joseph writes, not just with sorrow and pain, but with irony, even dark humor at times. This isn't a detached memoir. It's alive with a brutal, cutting awareness of the absurdity and horror of what he endured. It reminded me of Primo Levi in some ways, but Joseph's voice is uniquely sharp as he refuses to offer any sentimentality where none was possible. The translation itself by Paul Ochvari is excellent. I think the prose are very clear. It never strips away the emotional and intellectual depth of Joseph's words, and the book forces you to confront not just the Holocaust itself, but the ways in which human beings adapt to survival in unimaginable situations. So who is this book for? Well, if you appreciate Holocaust literature and want to read a memoir that until recently was nearly lost to history, especially here in the Western world, this is a must-read. If you've read Night by Elie Wiesel, or if This Is a Man by Primo Levi, then this belongs on your shelf right alongside them. It's not an easy book, but it's an important book. So who is this book not for? If you find unrelenting depictions of human suffering too difficult to process, this might be a challenging read. It is a Holocaust memoir in its purest, most harrowing form, and there's no uplifting arc or comforting resolution. It's a direct, unfiltered account of survival and loss. I can see why Cold Crematorium was overlooked for so long, but I'm also grateful that it's finally reached a wider audience. The fact that it remained untranslated due to Cold War politics and anti-Semitism is a stark reminder that history itself can be manipulated by those in power. Now that it is available, I think it's essential reading for anyone who wants to better understand not just the Holocaust, but the ways in which history, memory, and literature intersect. So if you've read Cold Crematorium, or if you're being drawn to reading it, please let me know in the comments. Let me know what would draw you to it, or what drew it to you when you read it. I would like to know what other people think about this memoir in particular. But don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.